Patrick Tate was released from prison on October the 30th, 1995, after being recalled there when a gun was found in his bedsheets in hospital after he was shot by Steve Nipper Ellis in the bungalow he shared with Sarah Saunders. His release from prison was just 5 weeks before his murder, alongside Anthony Tucker and Craig Rolfe down an isolated farm track in Rettendon, Essex. In the weeks following his release, Tony Tucker had become increasingly worried about something Pat Tate had done that could possibly reflect on him. So much so that he mentioned this to his girlfriend at the time, Donna Garwood. The following is the statement of Guy Garwood from the 13th of the 12th, 95. My sister is Donna Garwood. She was recently having a relationship with the deceased Tony Tucker. I was first aware that Donna was seeing Tony around November 94. I first saw them together at Raquel's discotheque in Basildon around that time. I was aware that he used to spend a lot of money on her, and Donna idolised him. Because of the age gap between them, I was a bit concerned and took it upon myself to speak to my dad about him. Shortly after I spoke to my dad, he told me he had spoken to a man named Dave, who had connections with people in the East London area club scene. My dad told me that the feeling was, although that Tony was a big man who could be nasty, he wouldn't be a problem with my sister. It went on that they used to spend a lot of time together. Tony didn't come to my mum's house because she wasn't that keen at first, but tried to come to terms with their relationship. I knew that Tony's current friends were Craig Rolfe and Patrick Tate. I was never certain of what the three got up to, but I knew that Tony used to run a lot of the doormen in Basildon and at Southend as well. I remember Donna told me that once that Pat Tate had come out of prison, she said that he'd only been out for 5 weeks. She said that since Pat had come out, Tony had become worried about something. He'd taken a bit of a low profile. He wasn't himself. Donna said that he started saying in a lot with her, and Tony was a bit jumpy. Donna said that Pat had done something which had reflected on Tony, but she didn't say what. About the beginning of December or the end of November, I came home to my mother's house in Basildon and found Donna sitting in Pat's black Mercedes. Donna had only just recently passed her test, but had difficulty driving it, as I understood from her. She had driven it from Pat Tate's bungalow in Gordon Road. I ended up driving the car back to Pat Tate's address. I cannot remember the index number. I knew Tony had a black Porsche, which got smashed up by Pat Tate. The blue Range Rover, as I knew, was Pat Tate's. Before they started using the Range Rover, they were driving a brown Ford Granada on an A or B plate. I've never heard any rumours about Tony Tucker, Pat Tate or Craig Rolfe. From my part, I thought they were just involved in running the doormen on the clubs. I do not know of anyone who may be involved in their murders. Now, one of the first things that stands out on this statement is Donna saying he's only been out for 5 weeks, obviously talking about Patrick Tate's release from prison. But, on all accounts, if we're to believe the Billy Jasper theory is the one true account of what took place on the 6th and 7th of December 1995, then it would make sense that Donna had said that Tony Tucker had started staying in a lot with her and had become jumpy. She goes on to say that she thought it was something that Pat had done, which was reflecting bad on Tony, but didn't say what. Now, on all accounts, if Tony Tucker was the intended target for the murders on the 6th and 7th of December, this would go in line with the warning from Billy Blundell to Patrick Tate, who said, if you're with Tony Tucker, when he gets it, you're going to get it too. Obviously, Pat turned around and said, if it happens, it happens. And just like Billy Blundell said, 3 days later, it happened. Could this warning from Billy Blundell been to Patrick Tate about Patsy Clark and the possible hit being taken out on Tony Tucker in the next few days? It would definitely explain Tony's different behaviour, staying in a lot and becoming jumpy. Also remembering around this time there was the Leah Betts death and the pressure from the police to find out who was supplying the ecstasy to Raquel's nightclub. This could easily explain why Tony Tucker had started staying in a lot more. Plus, there was the ongoing beef with Steve Nipper Ellis, which according to him, his dad was still being threatened by the three up into 2 weeks before their murders. All was done right, and it was actually something that Patrick Tate had done since his release from prison. Either way, it was enough of a change for her to mention to her brother about Tony's behaviour. And now we move on to the statement from Gary Jackets, which was the dinner booking for the Wednesday, the 6th of December 95 for 8:30. What makes this interesting is that Gary Jacket states that Tony Tucker always turned up for the bookings, and if he couldn't make it, he'd always let them know. The following is the statement of Gary Jackets from the 8th of the 12th, 95. I am the operations manager of the Global CAF. The company title is First Continental. The Global CAF Romford is situated in South Street. The CAF has been open for about 8 weeks. Since the CAF has been open, I've seen a man I know as Tony Tucker in the CAF about 2 or 3 times per week. I've known Tony on a casual basis for the last 8 years. I've been associated with various entertainment establishments in Essex that Tony has frequented. I've come to know him a little bit better over the last 18 months. I know only by reputation a friend of Tony's called Tate, but he has never to my knowledge been in the CAF. When I say by reputation, I mean as a criminal. Tony was a very valuable customer and was never reluctant to spend money. He was always very polite to the staff, who used to fight to serve him due to the tips he would give. He would always turn up for bookings, but if he couldn't make it, he would always let us know. He seemed to call mostly on a mobile phone, but was quite a hard man to contact if you needed to. I believe that Tony booked a table for 4 persons, phoning on Monday, the 4th of the 12th, 95. I do not know who took the booking. About 1 p.m. the next day, I came into the CAF and I was in a bit of a hurry, went past all the tables without seeing Tony. He came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hello." I apologised for not having seen him. He told me he'd see me the following night as he had a table booked for 8:30. His food was then served and he returned to the table, and I could see he was in the company of a young girl about 19 to 20 years old. She had long dark hair and I believe she was wearing a brown jumper. I did not see him again as I went about my business. For the whole period the CAF has been open, Tony has supplied the doorman for every night of the week. Tony deals direct with a head office situated at Romford, Essex. He then pays the doorman. We have always had the same doorman, Barry and Kevin. I do not know their surnames. We are linked by radio link to Hollywood's nightclub, just round the corner in Atlanta Boulevard, so we can get extra doorman quickly. Tony also runs the doorman at that nightclub. Sometime shortly before 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of the 12th, 95, I cannot be sure of the time, Tony phoned the CAF and stated that he wished to increase the bookings from 4 persons to 6 persons for the 8 p.m. booking, and I told him it was not a problem. We said goodbye and I didn't hear from him again. During Wednesday evening, I was busy at the restaurant. I was aware that Tony and his party had not turned up as booked, and at 10:30 we closed the restaurant. Hollywood's and the CAF are owned by the same company. When I spoke to Tony on Tuesday at the CAF and on the phone on Wednesday, he just seemed to be his normal chirpy self. And from the 13th for the 12th, 95, further to my previous statement made to the police regarding my knowledge of Tony Tucker and his movements at the Global Net CAF, I can say from my record book that a surprise party was booked by Anna on the 17th for the 11th, 95 for Tony's birthday for a party of 10. I was on the front door that evening and 5 couples including Tony and his girlfriend arrived. All the men looked big built and I was introduced to them all, but I can't remember any of the names given. Tony did the introductions. I would like to add that when I received a phone call from Tony on Wednesday the 6th of the 12th, 95, changing the 8:30 booking from 4 to 6 persons, the time was between 6 and 7 p.m. I cannot be any more specific than that. In general, Tony came in alone, sometimes with his girlfriends, whose name I do not know. Often he came in with people from First Continental head office on business type meetings, sometimes other women I do not know the identity of. Possibly on the 25th of the 10th, 95, I'm not sure of the date, during the evening, about 9 p.m, Tony was in the CAF with John Sims, an accountant from Southend, and an older man in his late 40s, early 50s, grey-haired, of slim build, smartly dressed wearing spectacles and a green Burberry coat. The grey-haired man was very quiet all the time the 3 men were in the CAF. So according to Gary Jackets, if Tony Tucker didn't turn up for any of the bookings that he'd made, he'd always make sure that he let them know. But not this night, not on Wednesday, the 6th of December 95. Why was that? And why also did Tony Tucker, Pat Tate or Craig Rolfe not let their girlfriends know that they wouldn't be attending this meal? This celebrational meal, by all accounts, celebrating something that was going down at around about 7:30. Donna Jaggers had been dropped off at the Lakeside Shopping Centre to buy something new for that meal. And there's also, just before 7 o'clock, the extra seats booked from Tony Tucker, making the reservations from 4 to 6. But less than an hour later, when they were meant to turn up for the meal between 8 and 8:30, they didn't, and they didn't call to let them know. What changed so quickly down that lane when they originally went down there at 7 o'clock, just to be told they had to return at midnight? What was the real reasons why the deal didn't go down at 7 o'clock? That's if we are to believe that Billy Jasper Ferry and the three weren't killed a lot earlier in the evening, according to Darren Nichols, just before 7 o'clock, which would make sense if we are to believe that the reason that the lane was chosen for the murders and that day in itself was because that was the day that the shoots ran late. And to most people, any shots being heard around about 6, 7, 8 o'clock would go unnoticed. In my opinion, there are a few statements that go against the Billy Jasper theory, and Gary Jackett's is one of them, and the non-cancellation of the restaurant booking. Of course, the restaurant bookings could have just been alibis for Tony, Pat and Craig if they needed them. Now, according to Claire Curry's mum, Pat Tate was going to be back within half an hour. So is it possible that extra seats booked for the restaurant weren't for Pat and say Claire Curry, or for Lizzie Fletcher or one of his girlfriends? Could it have been possibly for, if there was, a fourth passenger, and possibly the driver of the white Ford Cosworth seen several times with the Range Rover on the 6th of December? Now, it is possible they just didn't care about cancelling the meal booking and they just wanted to sort the deal out first before ringing the girlfriends to say it was done, they could go and celebrate. But of course, not cancelling the meal doesn't mean that they were dead by 8 o'clock or 8:30 at the time of the meal booking. Of course, there could have been many reasons why they didn't cancel the meal or phone the other halves. Now, of course, it's possible that the three were just so messed up on drugs down the lane or somewhere else that they forgot to call or just didn't care. Or, in fact, they were told they couldn't call. Maybe their mobile phones were taken away from them. The non-cancellation of the restaurant booking just adds to the mystery of what really went down Workhouse Lane on the 6th of December 1995.